being great isn't restricted by gender.
The best part about being here is just having a family so close to me. The weather is a plus.
Marlee Smith is a sophomore on the wrestling team. Her career on the mat began at a young age in Wantage, New Jersey. She pursued other sports, but in the end, she pinned down one. Despite having opportunities to go to other programs, she chose to be a Sun Devil, in part because of the history of women wrestlers at ASU, a history that includes her trainer and mentor, Kelsey Campbell. What was your first impression of Marlee?
She's super talented. I mean, I think the first time I trained with her, I could see right away, I'm like, this girl has way more talent than I had when I was in this room.
Kelsey Campbell first stepped into ASU's wrestling facilities over a decade ago, when she became the program's first woman on the roster.
You know, there's a tremendous history and tradition for women's wrestling here in the Valley in Phoenix. It really started with a person named Tricia McNaughton, who became Tricia Saunders, who really pioneered women's wrestling in the world.
And wrestlers have a certain kind of grit that other folks don't. I had to learn all the same lessons that everybody else did being committed to the sport. You just got to put your nose to the grind.
That created a platform for the next person, which was Kelsey Campbell, who wrestled at Arizona State and had a great career, made an Olympic team.
Campbell picks up the first 1 point.
So I think you start to see that evolution of women's wrestling and who really started to pioneer that.
And that evolution continues through Marlee, the second woman to land a spot on the Sun Devils roster. She not only trains with Kelsey, but also with the coaches and student athletes on the team.
What's your initial impression when you hear that there's a female wrestler on this campus who wants to be on your team?
When I hear about a female wrestler being on our team, on our roster, to me it's second nature. To most people, they're like, what? You have a girl on your men's wrestling team? But then you start to educate them and tell them, you know, that there's a platform for women's wrestling within our university system. But for some people, most, it's unusual.
Holds. You're not allowed to change. It's one hold, 6 seconds slide. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time. Get a drink.
Marlee's a member of our wrestling team. She's a wrestler. When I look at a women's soccer player, I'm looking at an elite athlete. I'm not looking at gender. It happens to be the gender of that team. But we're looking at elite athletes, and we want to train elite athletes and elite students. And hopefully there'll be elite student athletes. And she fits that.
But Marlee's time wrestling as a Sun Devil and against Division I student athletes ends at practice. Women's wrestling has yet to become a sanctioned sport in the NCAA at the Division I level. In order to compete, Marlee must travel to the East Coast and join tournaments not under the NCAA umbrella. She wrestles at the senior level, which means her opponents are usually close to a decade older than her.
As I started competing on the senior level, I'm wrestling women a lot older, and which was frustrating and still is. I had like a mental block, like, I'm never gonna win a match. Just kept telling myself negative things. And their strength, they're a lot stronger. But the more I do it, the more I'll get better, so I just gotta keep pushing through.
Unfortunately, as it was before, it's a lonely path for female wrestlers.
You just put your head down and work, and I tried not to ask too many questions, and I had no idea what I was doing most of the time, but I just acted like I did. I think I did my best, but it was pretty challenging, and I don't know. It was a very lonely time. So I'm still grateful for it, but it was not easy. It was not easy.
Having to work so hard to fight for women's wrestling through my whole career, it was a fairly lonely experience. I think some people say, you know, have you learned your lesson not to be so? And I say, absolutely not. I'm unapologetic when it comes to being uncommitted to the slow gradualism that really had been put forth to women's wrestling, where everyone said, well, we did a tiny bit, let's go play golf and then take a break, let's table it. Next thing, I was a huge pain in everyone's rear, still am.
Do you think you've been doubted at all because you're female in the sport?
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would doubt me and doubt other women wrestlers, but I mean, if they're not doing it themselves, then they can't really talk. And it pushes me to work harder, so that's always a good thing.
What comes up a lot between us is to always make sure that you vouch for yourself and make sure that you're speaking up for yourself. You're the female minority. You just can't be afraid to speak up. And you can't always worry about being polite. We're not in a very polite sport anyways.
Coach, how would you characterize what ASU is doing to not only help Marlee, but other females in the sport?
Well, I think if you're looking at Arizona State, the innovative school that it is, we're going to think outside the box. We're going to think about the future. We're going to think about what is going to empower our planet in the future, and that's women's wrestling at the Division I level. It's being on our roster, which is unbelievable, having Marlee on it, females on our roster. But I think where we're headed is a women's only roster that will field a full team in the future. That's at the scholarship, Division I, national championship level. And I think we're trying to pioneer that, and Marlee's one of those pioneers.
It's just what we do. It's about inclusivity, it's about breaking barriers down, and it's about making the world a better place. And in this case, we're trying to make Marlee's world a better place. And she's making our world a better place because of it. Our young people learn from that.
Marlee, you've already had a lot of success as a wrestler, but what's the end game for you?
I want to be a world champ, eventually make the Olympics, and my main goal is to start a women's team here at ASU. But it's just the matter of fact when. But I believe it'll happen within a couple years.
Finish it!
Women's wrestling, bare minimum, it's grown, and that's just changed the way it looks. I mean, wrestlers don't look the same. It's such a diverse sport now, and I'd like to think it is more inclusive than it used to be, but I think we still have a lot of work to do.